In this lesson, you'll write your very first lines of code. You'll touch on and use a few different concepts. However, rather than define them up front, we'll define these terms as we use them. Here's what we'll be learning. Don't worry, these terms should all look foreign to you. This is just to say we'll be learning a lot. At a high level, we'll discuss how to hold data in these next two lessons. Start by navigating to REPL.it, in particular REPL.it/languages/python3. I suggest pausing the video here and creating an account if you haven't already. Whereas you can code without an account, I suggest creating an account to save your code. After creating an account, make sure to navigate back to this new page, REPL.it/languages/python3. You should then see a screen like this one. In this lesson, I recommend following along. Just copy the code I have so you can see firsthand what your code does. First, on the right-hand side, this orange caret denotes an interpreter that is waiting for our input. This interpreter will read your input, evaluate that code, and return the resulting value. Let's try this now. Now, let's begin coding on the right-hand side of your screen in the Python interpreter. Go ahead and type in 5. This is a number, hit enter, Python evaluated, and then returned 5. Let's now type in a decimal, 5.2. Hit enter, Python evaluated, and then returned 5.2. Now, let's try an expression. Here we'll type in 5 plus 2. The space between the plus and the numbers is optional. This is just convention to keep code. Like before, Python will evaluate this and return the result. I'm being deliberate about the use of the word return. We input 5 plus 2, and Python returns the resulting value 7. We'll see later why returning is such an important concept. We can also try other expressions, such as 5 minus 2 and 4 divided by 2. Now, how do we define a variable? We can define a variable by assigning a value, such as 5, to the variable name x. Now, can we customize these variable names? And the answer is yes. You can use a, you can use z, you can use nyancat, you can use whatever you'd like with a few different restrictions. Your variable name can only contain letters and underscores. No periods, no spaces, no dashes. Only letters and underscores. The next question is, can we customize the value? And the answer is again yes. You can add 2, you can add an expression such as 3 plus 2. In sum, we can change the variable name and we can change the value. However, the symbol in black, the equal sign, is always the same. Anything colored in black in these visualizations is fixed, like the equal sign here. Now, let's try this in code. Still in our interpreter on the right-hand side, go ahead and start by defining a variable x and assigning it the value 5. Go ahead and hit enter. Notice that no value is returned. There is no return value when you assign a variable. You can use whatever variable name you'd like. Remember, variable names can only include letters and underscores. Let's go ahead and now examine what the contents of the variable x contains. Type in x and hit enter. Just like before, this x is an expression. We input x, Python recognizes this as a variable name, and returns the value that x contains, which is 5. Now here's a bonus tip. If you get a name error, this means you have a typo in the variable name. For example, we have not yet defined the variable u, so if I type in u and hit enter, the interpreter evaluates u, can't find the variable, and raises an error. Again, I'm using the word raises an error deliberately. So far, we have learned that the interpreter can either return a value or raise an error. We also mentioned assigning a variable to an expression. Here we can define x is equal to 3 plus 2. Now, x is actually assigned to the value 5. So go ahead and type in x, hit enter, and we can see that the variable x contains the value 5. Now, how do I use variables? Remember from before, we wrote 5 plus 2. We know Python will return 7. This time, since x is equal to 5, we can replace 5 with x. Just like before, this expression will return 7. Let's try it. Double check that x is equal to the value 5. Type in x and hit enter. Now, go ahead and type in x plus 2. This returns 7, as you expect. Now here's an extra challenge. I'm going to now type in x equals to x plus 2. What do you think this line of code does? Here we have x is equal to x plus 2. We have the variable name and the expression. Now the variable x at this point is equal to 5. So we can plug in 5 for x, and now we know that the right-hand side evaluates to 7. So we expect x to equal to 7. Here, let's go ahead and hit enter. Again, there is no return value. Type in x, and we can see now that x is equal to 7. I hit clear so that the code isn't clustered at the bottom of the screen. However, you don't need to hit clear yourself. Now, let's talk about two other data types. Next up is text. We call text strings. Here is an example string. Hello. Notice that the string is denoted by two double quotes. Make sure to use both start and end quotes. Between these quotes, you can add whatever characters you'd like, besides quotes. Let's try some more text. Here's another example. I love watermelon. Tip: always make sure to add a closing quote. Here's what it looks like if you forget. This EOL, or end of line error, means that we forgot a quote. You can also use single quotes for text. For example, here's a single quote and the text that we typed in earlier. For the purposes of this class, there's no difference between a single and a double quote. Now, what do you think this does? What does this plus do? As you may have guessed, it simply combines the strings together. Go ahead and hit enter, and you can see that the two strings are now combined. Notice there's a space after the double quote in the second string and before the W in world. This is to ensure that we have one space between the two words hello world in our final string. Our last data type is true or false. These are called booleans. Just to show you how they're spelled, this is boolean. Let's try it now. Go ahead and type in true with a capital T, and that simply evaluates to true. Go ahead and now type in false with a capital F, and this also just evaluates to false. Now it's not very interesting, so let's see what other expressions can return booleans. Like before, Python can read the input, evaluate the expression, and this time return a boolean. Let's try one of those expressions. We can type in 5 greater than 2, and that returns true. We can also use variables in our expressions. Recall that x has the value 7 from before. Now let's type x greater than 10. Here, Python will read x greater than 7, evaluate it, and return false. We can also check equality. To check equality, use two equal signs. Here we'll type in x equal to 7. Remember that one equal sign would assign x to the value 7. Two equal signs checks if x is equal to 7. Go ahead and hit enter, and this gives us true as expected. Now, what if you want more complex conditions? We want to see if x is equal to 7 and if x is greater than 7. Simply use the word and. Here we can type in x is equal to 7 and x is greater than 10. We know from before that x is not greater than 10. As a result, this will turn false. We can also use or. Let's go ahead and try that. X is equal to 7 or x is greater than 10. We know that x is equal to 7, so this will return true. That's it. That was a lot of concepts, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed at this point. You don't need to memorize everything. We're going to repeatedly use these concepts, and by coding repeatedly in the next few lessons, you'll slowly get an intuition for what's going on. You've learned a lot in this lesson. This is a quick summary of the concepts you've touched on: data types, operations, expressions, and variables. Good work. That's your very first piece of code. We looked at storing one piece of text, one number, one boolean. What if we have many pieces of text, many numbers? In the next lesson, we'll look at collections of data.